Today we'll explore the new features available in CockroachDB's Terraform Provider as of version 24.1. These features allow you to create and modify folders in the CockroachDB UI console, create and configure service accounts for use in programmatic access to CockroachDB clusters, and the ability to grant and revoke permissions for service accounts and users. If you're not familiar with the Cockroach Terraform Provider, head to registry.terraform.io and search for CockroachDB. That will take you to the overview page with information on how to use the provider. You'll see that this is what I have in my code, minus the 1.6, because that's what I'm running locally. And the documentation for all of the resources and all of the data sources can be found here. In this example, let's assume I'm some sort of investment bank and I have 3 business areas: mergers and acquisitions, trading and sales, and corporate sales. Under each of these, I'd like to create a staging and production folder. So I'll create a hierarchical nesting of folders. I'll then create a counterparty cluster and I'll add that into the trading sales business area underneath the production environment. I'll call the cluster CRDB Terraform Demo, and I'll create an admin user called Rob. The Terraform code itself looks like this. I'll create a local variable that will represent that folder structure of business areas and environments. I'll create the business areas and then the subfolders for those. I'll reference the folder matching the name Trading Sales Production. I'll then create a cluster called Counterparty. It will be in AWS. Its name will be the one that I provide in the variable. I'll base it in Frankfurt and it will have no spending limit. And its parent ID or folder will be the one that I referenced in the data source. I'll create an admin user called Rob, and then I'll create a service account. I'll use this for things like metric scraping using the new Prometheus Metrics Endpoint. And finally, I'll grant that new service user organization member access, which is a necessity. All service accounts have to be an organization member, and I'll grant it the minimum privileges possible to scrape metrics from that endpoint against that cluster and that cluster alone. I'll run Terraform apply, and that will create my desired folder structure in the console. We can see that's created already. Under each of these folders, there's a production and staging. And under the production folder for trading sales, that's where I'm creating my cluster. It's currently provisioning, and once it's created, I'll connect to it. With the cluster created, I'll have a shell URL that I can use to connect to the cluster. That cluster has been created along with the user, and I can use the user's credentials to connect to the cluster. Refreshing the page shows that the CRDB Terraform demo cluster is now available. And if I go to Access Management and Service Accounts, the CRDB Terraform Demo Metric Scraper service account user has been created and given the organization member and cluster operator credentials that would allow it to scrape metrics for this cluster. These new features will be useful for customers managing more complex environments that require the use of folders and subfolders to organize their clusters. For users wishing to automate the creation of service accounts for programmatic access to metrics, user administration, and cluster administration, these new features will also benefit you. Have a play with the new Terraform Provider functionality and let us know what you think.